It's very much the case for me that a victim is completely outside of the criminal justice system. You sit on the outside. This was a case that didn't go to trial because the offender pleaded guilty. I wasn't there for the sentencing because I was overseas, so I didn't hear any plea in mitigation. I didn't know his story. I was really angry about it. But as a conciliator, that's because that's what I do. I do know how useful it can be and how you can actually find out something about what, why, and how the hell did we get here from actually talking to somebody. And I never thought I would be in that situation. I've been the person doing the conciliating. I've been in the criminal justice system as a lawyer. And suddenly I was given the opportunity in a case where I was angry and bitter and an experience I hadn't had before, the other side of the fence altogether. And I just thought, well, if I've got this chance, I know that the only way you can get any kind of understanding is to ask the questions and to face the issues. I thought, well, why wouldn't I do that? I think it's a really excellent way to go forward. So I thought, yeah, I'll do it. It was an absolutely surreal experience, actually, walking into the prison as a victim to talk to an offender. It was really very strange. I didn't know whether he would want to say anything. I didn't know if he'd be able to say anything. I felt the stronger of the two of us, really, because I had a lot more experience in dealing with confrontational issues, and I felt that he might find it really difficult. And it was a strange feeling. There am I going in there thinking, I wonder if he'll be able to say anything. Where are we going to get with this? Do I shake his hand? Or are we allowed to touch? You know, I thought all those things. I have to say, though, that the conciliator that was appointed by the programme she was absolutely amazing. We had pre-conciliation discussions. So I knew at least that the offender was willing to meet. And I think that was the big hurdle. If he'd been hesitant, I wouldn't have even considered going. But the very fact that he was willing to do that, I thought was a very brave thing to do. He had nothing to gain from it. It wouldn't make any difference to his sentence. It wouldn't make any difference to the way he was treated. It wouldn't make any difference to his parole. And it would be bloody terrifying, much more so than for me. So we just walked in. I suppose you just walk in and wing it, a bit like I'm doing today. Just see what happened. And we walked in there, and he wasn't able to speak, actually, initially. And he'd prepared a letter, and he'd written down everything he wanted to say to me in case he wasn't able to speak, because he thought he'd be so nervous. He was shaking. So and it said on it, you can read it now or you can read it after if you want to. So I sat there and read it, and then I shook his hand, and that was it broke the ice, and I think he was willing to speak. I just tried to set his mind at rest that I wasn't going to beat him up or something. I mean, I'm an old lady, but... Well, it did, because as in any situation, you get to know someone. And you get to know someone even when you look at them, and even if you don't speak, you know something about them. And we talked for 2 hours nearly. He made me a cup of coffee. So it actually became very relaxed. And I was asking all the questions. I really wanted to know how he felt. He obviously felt some remorse because he'd come along to the meeting, but I wanted to know how he felt about the offence now, after this was 4 years. And it was really interesting. He said, I said, do you think that the sentence you got was severe? Do you think it was a long one? Because interestingly, just last week in Tasmania, there was a very similar offence reported. A man was just sentenced to 3 years for killing a person in another vehicle and injuring another. So it seemed to me that it was actually quite a harsh sentence compared to Tasmanian sentencing, very severe. He said, no, I think it's what I did was so bad, I have to live with that. I asked him about his family background, and he looked after his mother, who was very ill, and he lived with her and cared for her. He was a full-time worker. He'd always worked hard, but he came from a family of, his dad was a drunk, so he drank, and he'd had not a great advantage in life, but on the other hand, he'd led a good, solid life. And I thought afterwards, we're not so much different. You just take a wrong turn and you end up in there, and I end up here. It's a strange thing. So what I did learn was that he had, because I wasn't at the sentencing, and so I wasn't there when my victim impact statement was read out, but I had written a lot in my anger and frustration about how would you feel if someone knocked on your door in the middle of the night and said that your only family member had been killed. How would you feel? And I'd written about my brother and the loss, because he lived in Victoria, a big community-minded person. And Hayden talked to me about what was in that victim impact statement. He used my brother's name. He didn't just wash over it. He said, I'm really sorry that he can't any longer work for Louise Van or, whatever, the other things that he only did. He said, but when I get out, I can do those things. I thought, my God, I didn't raise any of that. He raised it. And I thought, yeah, this is not a bad man. This is just... And I thought, too, I think anybody would be lying in this room if at some stage, when they were stupid and 18 or 19, didn't drive with too much alcohol in their body. It could have been anybody. It's answered questions. It's engaged me in a process that otherwise would have excluded me completely. I think it's right, when we punish people, that we have some kind of a response, not just a stake in it, but a responsibility for it. I didn't sentence him to 7 years, but that's what happens when you do that here in Victoria. So I would say it's absolutely worth it, because it just gives you that chance to face the person who's done the deed. I mean, that's number one thing. Helps you to... It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make you... I'm not sort of touchy-feely, it's all going to be all right, or anything like that. It's just... You've got to do what you can, and you've got to make sure that the system's working for you as a victim. I think that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know, when this bloke came out, was he going to do it again? Was he sorry about it? So I would say definitely do it, and I think anyone, if they feel comfortable with it and have the help through it that the program provided, which I think was vital, even for me who's worked in the system, it was really essential, I think. So I would say do it.